Yeah, so the potluck ceremony is a ceremony of giving. Right, they're giving wealth. Okay. And how did they give that wealth? The leaders, so the wealthiest, they were just giving. Right, so it's a personal choice. And from what we've learned so far with communism, how is the government how is that wealth shared? Did anyone catch? So the video went over it really quickly, but the government redistributes it, right? Let's say through taxes and social programs. Okay. So in Canada, we have what's called a progressive tax system, which I'm pretty sure is an idea right out of Karl Marx's book, that the more you earn, the more money you give to the government. And that money then gets shared to everyone, more or less, through, let's say, certain social programs, or just money transfers, right? So let's say if you are someone who's not doing well off, or for whatever your situation is, the government just gives you money to help you pay your bills, to help you get by. Okay. But what happens if you don't pay taxes? What do you think happens? Since I don't think any of you could get into trouble with the law, could go to jail. What did you say? Did you say the same thing? What? Yeah, the government doesn't forget what you owe them. So even if you don't pay, they'll keep a record. And one day they'll collect. And maybe you get sent to jail as well, right? Whereas the potluck ceremony was more so if you shared your wealth, if you gave it to other people, or if you destroyed it, you're just demonstrating how wealthy you are, and it's a way for extending your bonds in the community, but it's done willingly, right? No one forces you to do it. So you could keep hoarding all your wealth, but what do you think is going to happen to you if you never share with people? Do you think that person is going to be well liked? Probably not, right? Especially if that sharing could help someone else survive or not survive, especially in a smaller group community setting. Okay, moving on into some other, again, we're just looking at globalization and imperialism, the movement of people. Okay. Industrialization played an important role in that as well. Industrialization. I would probably change this now that I know more, but industrialization is just continued innovation. Okay. So innovating on technologies that already existed, on practices that already existed, and trying to make them better, more efficient, more effective. And part of that comes from, once they started improving their methods of food production, getting access to more resources, and being able to utilize those effectively. Let's make sure we're not on our devices. So it look very suspicious. Once there's more nutrients available for people as well, it's more efficient and effective they have more efficient and effective ways of making food. It frees up a lot of people's time, a lot of their labor, which allows them to maybe think and to innovate and to recreate systems. And through that, they are able to then advance the technology of their society, which allows them more ability to manipulate the world around them. Okay, so we're gonna look at some photos later, but a great example is, the ships that brought Europeans over in the year 1500, what do you think they were made out of? The ships that they used to transport people and things, what materials do you think they used? What do these ships look like, do you think? Looks like a boat, right? Made of wood. How do you think the boats moved?
On water.
Sure, on water, but okay, so look, manually, potentially, right? Vikings had ships like that. They had, what did you call it over here? Sails, right? So what's a sail? Not what happens every other week, Black Friday and Christmas or whatever.
Blanket.
It's a big blanket-like thing. Yeah. The wind catches it and pushes it. How long do you think it took for them to use the wind to push them across the ocean? Long time. 2 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks?
Years.
Not a year. They wouldn't have survived. Right? It probably took them around 4 to 6 weeks to get across the ocean in wooden ships with sails. Do you think they had a GPS back then? They did. It was just really inefficient. They had to look up at the stars. Right? Google couldn't tell them with a satellite image. Right? Yeah, they were using wooden ships. Wooden ships can be really fragile. They were using wind. Wind is very inconsistent. It's not reliable. Some days it's windy, some days it's not. Okay, so many days I'm sure they were just floating in the middle of the water. When you order something off Amazon and it comes from the other side of the world, how do you think it gets transported now? Yeah, plane, right? Maybe, right? They still use ships, but what are those ships made out of? Metal. How do those ships move? Propellers. Propellers are fueled by gasoline, maybe. I actually don't know exactly what they use, right? So they innovated on the technology. How many of you grow your own food? Anyone? Anyone like toil in the earth? Grow your own food? No. Sometimes. Yeah? What do you do? Mom has a garden. Yeah. And you guys harvest? Nice. Right? What about you? You said you have a garden?
Yeah.
What do you harvest?
Tomatoes and beans.
Tomatoes, beets, right?
Beans.
So beans. Okay. It's pretty awesome that we live in a time where we don't have to spend 90% of our day just making sure that we'll have food. Right? It means we're free to do things like go to school, which some of you might not like doing. Right? But imagine all day working in a field, digging. You'd like that. Okay. So these innovations, this industrialization allowed more people free time to do other things and to then get specific. That was also something in capitalism. They created specific jobs. So instead of one person doing all the tasks needed to make an item, they split that item into tasks and they hired 5, 6, 7 people to do it. Right? So maybe one person grows the food, they sell it off to someone, and that person processes it, and they sell it again, and all these little exchanges make money for people. Okay, they create jobs, something for you to do, right? Other than just sit around and be bored. Because that's probably what you do when you're doing nothing and have free time, sitting around being bored, right? Okay. So one of those major inventions was the steam engine. So how do you think people moved around before they had cars?
Horses and carrots.
Horses, if you were lucky. Cows, again, if you were lucky.
They just walk.
Camels, again, if you're lucky. Hey, you just walk. You use Old Reliable right here, right? And just walk everywhere. And if you were lucky, maybe you had some nice shoes. I'm sure a lot of people just walk barefoot everywhere. How crusty do you think their toes were? Are you making this face like the, they're probably really gross. Who knows, right? Who knows? Maybe their feet weren't crusty. But all of a sudden, instead of using animals or their feet, they invented a steam engine. They put it into vehicles, they put it onto trains, and all of a sudden, their capacity to move has been increased by tenfold, hundredfold, right? The world becomes a much smaller place. So instead of relying on water or wind or human or animal power, now they can use some stored energy in the earth. That's what like coal, oil, that's what all this stuff is. It's just energy locked away in a little lump or whatever, liquid or a gas. They're able to activate that energy and then use it to advance and make life better. And that's what you do when you step on the gas pedal in your car. You're making your life better by using old stored energy. Your car uses that, converts it into movement, and it brings you to school, which again, many of you might not like, but sure beats sitting at home bored. Just bored in general. Okay? There are some other things as well, the flying shuttle, the spinning jenny, power loom. Okay, they are helping to create more textiles, more fibers. So again, clothes become cheaper. These like material goods become cheaper, more accessible. And instead of having these homemade small businesses, then they start making factories, so employing large amounts of people, also forcing more people into cities, okay, which has its own challenges, upsides and downsides. Okay. And part of the upside and downside to factories is that the upside might be that you have a job, you have a way to earn money, and you can do that instead of growing food, and maybe you can save some of the money. The downside is that maybe working conditions were awful. Maybe the risk of losing your arm, leg, or your life was always a threat. Some of the other jobs at that time might have been working in a coal mine, so swinging a pickaxe. Hopefully we've all seen a pickaxe before, right? Doing that all day, right? Like it's kind of like playing Minecraft, except without the fun. Without the fun bit. And except without the bit where you make your house and your castle in like one day. Right? Instead, you just go, you dig for coal, and your boss yells at you, and you die of like cancer or whatever diseases they used to get. Okay, and look, they were so equal back then. Not just men, women and children also worked. Isn't that excellent? Look at that equality. So much progress. Here's some